Hey guys, welcome to another AMA with me, Mark Koenigsberg. We're going to be talking CoinJanitor and October updates. We're going to give it a few minutes, let some more people come in. If you're around, feel free to say hi in the comments box, and let's make sure this is working. In the meantime, we're going to wait a few more minutes for some people to come. So in the meantime, I did get some questions sent in by people that they wanted addressed, and I'm guessing that some of you will have the same questions and some others. So I'll answer whatever you guys are asking in the chat box, and I'll also try and address some of the questions that were sent in from people who can't make the AMA. And we'll give it another 2-3 minutes, and then we'll start talking about CoinJanitor and all of the work that we've been doing the last few months, and what it looks like for the next few months, and what you can expect from me and the rest of the CoinJanitor team. I'll try to do a combination of typing and speaking, but I think I'm going to revert mostly to speaking and just reading off comments. So let's call another minute and we'll get started. And for everyone that's here already and everyone joining or watching later, thanks so much for taking the time on a Sunday to join me and spend some time. I know it's weekend and very, very difficult to think about work all the time on a Sunday, but I appreciate the time and I appreciate you being part of our community. Okay, I think we should give it a go. Looks like last time as well, like I'm getting a lot of messages on WhatsApp and Telegram. So I'm going to try and deal with those as they come in as well. So someone want to start with a question? Or should we pick one from someone that sent in? Okay. So firstly, a quick summary of what's happened the last few months. So we closed the ICO, and thanks to amazing support by people in the community and you watching, we managed to reach our targets in terms of the amount of money we need to operate. And we started moving over to the next phase, which is actively buying out coins. At the moment, we still have the end of ICO website app, which we will soon be swapping to the live portal with the list of delisted tokens, and also all of the swap functionality will start to be turned on. So users can come to us for coins that we're buying out, or for coins that we haven't yet, and register for the swap when the time is relevant. And we worked on exchange listing, and we've been working on buyouts. So I'll give a little bit of an update of both of those because I know those are important parts of the community. So in terms of exchange, we had an original deal with an exchange. It was a pretty large centralized exchange, and we were excited about it during the ICO because we understood that the way the market was evolving was going to be difficult to get listings on large exchanges. But when the time came, and having some more discussions with the exchange, I felt, and some of the CoinJanitor team members echoed it as well, that there's too great a risk in relying on a large centralized exchange. I believe that the nature of the market is changing very, very quickly, specifically in terms of exchanges, and the needs for KYC and government intervention and financial compliance are changing very, very quickly. And I think this, coupled with the increased level of counterparty risk, once you have a few large exchanges of critical mass, I think that unfortunately it bodes badly for crypto in the medium term. And if a large part of your strategy is based on a large centralized exchange, unless you're the exchange collecting the fees, I think that we may be in for some really, really big surprises. So based on that, the exchange for us forms a slightly different function to many other tokens and RCOs. The exchange is not primarily as a price determinant. It's not a mechanism for pump and dump. Exchange needs to be a stable, long-term mechanism, allowing for the swapping of dead coins to CoinJanitor and then back into Bitcoin or Ethereum. So stability was the most important for us, and that means, you know, time business. It means the nature of the team, but it also means volatility in terms of being subject to compliance, in terms of changes in regulatory environments. And we decided that the best thing for CoinJanitor was to work on a DEX. If you're watching, a DEX is a decentralized exchange, which is subject to very different rules to a centralized exchange, many of which are not in play at the moment. But within the next 6 months to a year, I think that centralized exchanges, barring a couple of the really mammoth exchanges, is going to look very, very different, and the wisdom of moving with DEX will become apparent. So the question was then which DEX to work with. This is really quite a nascent space. There's not a lot of largely developed DEXs, and obviously the question of liquidity comes into it. And we did get a couple of questions about that, so I'll address that separately. In the end, we partnered with an exchange by the name of AZ Exchange, which we know the founders of the exchange. We've seen the development roadmap. We have a lot more understanding about what's actually going on behind the scenes, what drives them, and what they think is important. And we did a deal with them that will also allow for custom development of janitor tools. So we're in discussions for things like a janitor-only exchange, where people could come with the dead coins and actually trade them directly using the DEX like tech. We have a lot of UI upgrades. We have a lot of potential APIs with our own data. And this we felt was going to give us, at least for the next couple of years, a much more stable mechanism, so that exchange didn't become the main point of failure for us. Now, to a lot of people in the RCO space, this is counter to what many other RCOs do, but Jane is a different project. And I think that, you know, if we have this discussion a year from now, I think that we're having a very, very different discussion. And it's something that we took with a lot of gravity. And we really try to project forward what we thought was going to happen. And at the end of the day, I made the call to do what I think is best for the mechanism of swapping coins, which is an integral part of Janitor's, you know, use case and its ability to deliver. The second part is the buyouts. So we've been in negotiation with a few different coin owners and people who connected us with or connected with various projects. And we're moving along and we are making progress. What we found though is that the first round of buyouts, where we aim to do 3 in one go, is actually very, very, very important. And the precedent that's established during the first round, also in terms of the commercials and the mechanisms and the tech and community involvement, are going to really impact on the next buyouts that we have. So we've taken a little bit more time to try and do it in a way that we think is healthier. We also have met some resistance, which we knew could be the case because we haven't done this before. A lot of project owners want to wait until we've done some buyouts before they agree to have their project bought out. Also have the issue of ego. Like I spoke to OneCoin and they loved the idea, everything was good, and you know, we kind of got down to brass tacks of let's pull the trigger and actually do this deal. And they're delisted. They haven't been functioning as blockchain for a couple of years. They're really much older POW coin. And I made them an offer, which I think is generous because it's something. And at the end of the day, the coin is worth nothing. And they started negotiating. And don't mean trying to find the best offer for everyone, but they started demanding what I think is exorbitant and ridiculous amounts of money, Bitcoins, in order to be bought out. And I tried to explain to them that the offers on the table were 0 or my offer. And in the end, they chose 0 in the hope that bluff would, you know, have me come back and increase my offer. And just to be clear to any project owners watching, we have created the entire economic model here that it is a win-win for everyone. You will get more working from us in terms of Bitcoin tradable or Janitor tokens. We will get more in terms of community and ability to buy out and further as a mechanism. But yeah, we're not going to pay ridiculous amounts of money for a coin that does not function, a blockchain that is inactive. It just doesn't serve the purpose that Janitor sets out to achieve in the market. And other than short-term wins, or other than community members who want to see specific things happen in the medium term, remember that the primary purpose of Janitor is to create a long-standing, sustainable mechanism for recycling crypto assets, something that doesn't exist currently in the market. And that is only going to be done based on a precedent that is repeatable and scalable, also at user levels as well as economic levels. And that means that we have to do a lot of modeling for this, which we've done. It also means we have quite strict parameters in the beginning for the first buyouts, and it makes it a little bit harder for us. But at the end of the day, the health of the market and Janitor and all the community members will benefit directly from us having been wiser and not greedy in the first stage. So that's kind of a super quick update. I'd like to tell you about some of the things coming up, but I'd also like to get to some of the questions. So one of the questions that we got was, why did we take so long to list on an exchange, and in the end only one that was a relatively new DEX? So I think I've mostly answered the new DEX part. And the reason we took so long is we actually spoke to a large exchange where we didn't meet the threshold criteria for being on the exchange. The raise wasn't big enough. They have a massive listing fee. There's a lot of things we just couldn't pass. But we spoke to the management, and because Janitor is such an interesting project, they were willing to waive a lot of the entrance criteria. And we spent a period of about 6 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks, actually meeting with them and trading information back and forth until it came to a final management vote. And it was very close, but in the end, they decided that it wasn't the precedent they could stomach. They couldn't let one coin through because it was special. But yeah, they did approach us. They were very interested, and my hope was that we were going to list there. Now, part of being responsible, I'm not going to tell you who it was, but it was a very big exchange, and I think it would have been quite a shock to see a coin like Janitor get onto an exchange that traditionally doesn't take ICOs or tokens very easily. So part of the deal with them was that we would not list anywhere else until they gave their final answer. And if we did list with them, they wanted a period of exclusivity. Not forever, but we had to guarantee that we'd only place Janitor could be traded in the short term. So I made the call that it would be worth it to give them exclusivity if we got to list on said big exchange. And then they said no. So we kind of went back to the drawing board, and during all the negotiations, we've been preparing, with other exchanges and looking into our preferences were, but we obviously couldn't actively engage any. So that delayed the process. And I'm sorry that it appeared to some people that it took longer than it should. I think I've worked with a lot of RCOs. I think we're still very much in the median for time to list. But I'm not sorry for the reason it took a delay, because we were doing what was best for the project, and in the end, it didn't work out, and we adapted and evolved. I think that's, I didn't address the first part of the question yet, which I will, but the issue with Janitor is until we are a year or two into, automated operating, and a lot of these swaps have moved over to atomic technology or something else, it's going to be a lot of periods of quiet and then something, quiet and then something, because that's the nature of the project, because we aren't a user-facing platform in the traditional sense. We're really, kind of M&A company, or, a recycling plant. So each stage will get shorter and shorter in the time it takes to see the results. But the first few months of Janitor are really going to be, okay, this is what we're doing, nothing new to say until it's ready, nothing new to say until it's ready, and now all of a sudden it's ready. And any mistakes in communication or delays that have happened as a result of choices we've made, I'll take as my fault and I'll own. Although I think that there's not a lot of mistakes here, even though some people would disagree, I'm for sure. And definitely not a reflection at all on the other team members of Janitor or how hard they work on a daily basis. And we're all really working very, very hard to make this happen, and it takes a lot of work behind the scenes to make that happen. So anyway, back to the exchange, I guess. So I think that mostly answers the question, at least the part of time frames and the choice index. And related to that is really the question of liquidity. And great, thanks for the question and welcome. And yeah, guys, excuse me, kind of zooming into the camera and see the question, but the writing's quite small on my screen. So I want to address the issue of liquidity. This is a very, very, very important issue, and it speaks to a lot of the basic principles in crypto from an economic perspective and the difference in Janitor. And the difference is subtle, but it is fundamental, and it is something that is often misunderstood. Most cryptocurrencies and their success are related to network effect. And network effect and the functions that drive that really being community development and kind of market awareness. Somewhere along the last year or two, with the hype and ICOs, we seem to have forgotten that network effect and usage is the primary driver of success. And this unhealthy relationship between seeming success in the marketplace and crypto price, and then the exchange pressure that can drive that price, became the default way that a lot of new ICOs operate. And this kind of circle of tokenomics was created, in which we will raise money, we'll spend money on marketing, which will create awareness. That awareness will drive people to us. We will use the money we raised to acquire them and convert them to active users, create some sort of utility which is only available through the use of our token, which will drive buyer pressure or demand on the exchange, which will therefore drive up price, which will increase the value of our token holdings that we have, which will allow us more marketing budget to drive further awareness, which will drive users, which will drive price, which will drive value. And yeah, I've spoken about this in a couple of places, and in its simplest form, I think this is total trash. It's not the way crypto works, and it is, in my humble opinion, a irrational hope that the market kind of accepted, or a large part of the market accepted over the last year. And I think it's already been proved to be incorrect, and within the next year it's going to be obvious just how dangerous it was. Exchange pressure does not make a successful token. It is not sustainable. And if the success of your project is deeply, deeply related to the price as a function of exchange pressure, then I am willing to bet that the odds are stacked against you that being able to succeed. So when we created CoinJanitor and the economics behind it, we tried to remove price as the determinant of our ability to execute. And all buyouts, everything happened in Janitor tokens, which is the way that we separate them, and use exchange as a mechanism to fulfill use case rather than a reason to exist. Now, obviously, there's indirect relationships here in terms of demand for a token, increasing our ability to do buyouts, because the higher the demand, the more desirable, and therefore the easier it is to negotiate with people. But that's very different from liquidity or buyer pressure on an exchange. And then obviously the fact that if we aren't able to, let's just say there's a lot of indirect, but they're really indirect, and they really speak much more to our ability to communicate with the market, our ability to actually buy out coins, our ability to provide users with tokens, So let's go back to liquidity. There are two very different types of liquidity. The first is exchange liquidity, and the second is individual token liquidity. Now, when most people speak about liquidity in Telegram or on social media, they're talking about the overall liquidity of the exchange. You look at things like Binance or Bittrex or Kraken or HitBTC or any of the big exchanges. Look at the level of liquidity. This is real liquidity. And a lot of people have categorized exchanges today in three categories, being like tier 1, 2, and 3 exchanges. So Binance being tier 1, and others being tier 2, and then kind of new exchanges being tier 3. And often that's done based on overall trade volume or liquidity, right? So there are two very big problems with liquidity as a measure of choice of exchange. The first is that the vast majority of liquidity on any exchange occurs on very commonly traded base pairs, meaning Bitcoin to Tether, Ethereum to Bitcoin, Litecoin, any of the kind of top 10 coins. And once you move out of that, you see that more than 90% of the liquidity is gone anyway. So that isn't actually relevant for an individual token. And the second part of the problem is that if you have a look at exchange and exchange history over the last year, even for exchanges that do take a lot of tokens, like you look at something like HitBTC, for example, which has managed to be relatively successful with ICO launches, the size of the exchange in terms of liquidity does not translate to liquidity on a new token. Every token brings its own level of liquidity to an exchange. So any inherent liquidity that exists on an exchange before the token listed doesn't actually have an effect on how successful that token will be or how much will be in demand or traded, And the thing that does affect it is users, obviously. But as the number of tokens that get added to an exchange pass a certain amount of tokens in the tens of tokens, which most of the exchanges passed already, the visibility of new tokens decreases to such a marginal low number that it is largely irrelevant. And the cross-pollination that occurs between users trading on other base pairs versus new token, other than a lucky comment in a troll box, is virtually zero. So we looked into this a lot and we realized it's actually a fallacy. If your tokenomics are deeply linked to the price and you need that buy pressure to be able to fill a mission, then okay, that's one thing, and you have to do market making and things like that, which is also what most people do and something we don't really believe in. Then liquidity is something you can talk about in relation to your individual token, but the overall level of liquidity of the exchange doesn't translate to token liquidity. I'm touching on a lot of different things. I'm trying to do it, as 50,000 feet as possible. Also because I talk a lot and because these are very, very in-depth subjects. And what I'm putting forward is my opinion, and anyone's welcome to disagree. Just before you do, I just urge you to consider that there's not something I made up in my bedroom. This is based on years and years of data. So if you want to have a discussion about it, if you want to do it live, I'm happy to do that, but at least bring some data and not just the same one sentence repeated again and again. Cool. So I hope that answers at least generally the liquidity. To summarize, I think that exchange liquidity overall doesn't determine the success of an exchange for an individual token. Individual token liquidity is largely not a function of the exchange chooses to list on, but rather other marketing efforts. And the larger an exchange, the more centralized it is, the greater the risks are currently and will be over the next year. So I think when you weigh all of that up together, a committed DEX that doesn't seem to have liquidity is actually a much better stable option. Okay, great. So we have a couple of questions here. So one which was just asked, but it's a very, very important one, is realistically, when do we expect the first buyout to be announced? So this is really the key. This is what determines how we do as a project and is really an absolute function of the work that we've been doing. I cannot commit to that because it's not only up to me, but realistically, this is something that we expect to see within the coming month. We're aiming to do 3 at the same time. If we see that it's too difficult to get the first 3 bedded down at the same time, then we may just do one. But there's a lot of reasons, and they're also in the white paper, why we don't want to announce a solitary buyout, why we think it's necessary to do 2 or 3 at the same time as the first ones. It's to establish a range of characteristics so that we enable a spectrum of type of coin rather than make it seem like we're limited to a specific characteristic. Also, the idea of precedent and proving use case requires 2 or 3 examples. But realistically, we are aiming for November. We seem to be on track for that, to be able to announce the 3. I'll keep you guys updated, and that really is my hope. I was expecting that we've been able to already, but we haven't been able to close down all the commercials, so I will let you know. And then the process from there, we'll explain. But basically, as soon as we announce it, then it opens up for swaps immediately to users. So once we announce a coin is in buyout stage, then any holders of those coins can come and just swap it immediately with Janitor, trade it out straight in the exchange, and you don't have to hold it. Okay, so another question is, do we have a limit to the number of dead coins that we can work with at any given time? So yes, in the beginning we do actually, because we're doing everything manually. Every single swap in the first few stages is going to be done user to user by our customer support. So there is an operational limit on how much we can do. There's also an economic and use case limit where we need to establish some sort of precedent. I keep talking about precedent, but it's because we're looking to create a long-term mechanism. This isn't a land grab. I was very clear leading up to the ICO and during it, and since then, that this is something that we know will take years to establish in the marketplace. So to translate that into some sort of numbers, first stage, which we'll do this year, hopefully November it will open already, and as soon as we can. That will consist of 3 coins. That's the plan. Then every month following that for the next quarter will be the addition of 1 or 2 new coins a month. Once we pass that first quarter, the buyouts will still be open and those first coins will still be being bought out, but we're going to swap to the second stage, which increases our operational ability a lot and won't be as manual. Plus we'll now have more track record and hopefully more coins are going to be bought out. So at that stage, we're planning to switch to 5 or 10 parallel coins a month. And 6 months after that, we plan to launch something that will enable us to do this much faster and much easier, and basically remove our cap on the number of coins we can do in parallel. So roughly speaking, looking at like a month to first 3, another 3 months of 1 or 2 additional a month, 6 months of 5 to 10, and at that point, which we were aiming for July 2019. I think realistically it's probably closer to August, September, but that will open up our capacity and we will effectively have no limit. We'll have a limit, but not something that the market will be able to meet. So effectively within the year we won't have a limit, but right now we're talking about a few coins a month, but they carry on in parallel. So every coin we add isn't replacing a previous coin for buyout, it's just being added in addition. Cool, guys. If that doesn't answer either of your question, please add something or extend the question, and I'll be happy to answer it some more. Roadmap for moving forward and what you can realistically expect. So within the next week or so, we'll be announcing a new website and we'll be turning that on. So that will shift us from a kind of hibernation phase to actively going out to the market again. And with that, we'll increase again our marketing. It won't be as aggressive as it was during the ICO levels, but it will be much more, again, interviews and live and a lot more pickup on social media. And we also have a few partnerships, which we'll be announcing, where we have some token swaps with some other companies, where we have a small piece of technology that someone's built that will integrate into Janitor, or we'll be providing some of Janitor's data out to other companies, and more business development and our ability to integrate into other communities and to assimilate aspects of other communities into our own will become the kind of MO for Janitor for next year. And in parallel, obviously, the buyout team will be focusing on increasing the number of coins that we absorb. Which brings us to two other very interesting parts of Janitor. And one of the questions that I got, well, let me just make sure I'm getting it right. Okay, so we spoke about offering data to Janitor holders only. When can we expect this, and what should we expect? Okay, so a good question. We will be providing data. The first stage will be public and the same date to everyone, which is a list of delisted tokens. We will be providing data to Janitor holders, but this will be a little bit later than we originally expected. We're expecting at the end of Q4 2018 to be providing certain fields to Janitor holders only. In the end, that is more likely going to be the first quarter of 2019. But from that point on, Janitor holders will start getting access to the basic tabular data, but with extended metrics. So for example, we now are listing the coin that's delisted, when it was created, the basic algorithm it runs on, whether it's been indexed on sites like Deadcoins or Coinopsy, and the kind of state of market volume, market cap if there is any, and kind of trading status, right? So that's the basic data everyone has access to. But Janitor holders will have access to some further data, which is some of our development data, some of the velocity data in terms of either transactions or blockchain activity, some of the social sentiment data. That was the first stage. And through some of our partnerships, we'll be giving out some indicators in changes of projects. And we've been working on mapping the behavior of coins that die. Is there commonality? Is there an early indicator that is a good sign that there is a problem? That kind of thing. And that is something that, as we move past the buyout stage, we'll be talking more about, and something that I really want the community members to weigh in on and to guide that, because this ultimately is substantially more of a community effort and more of an initiative for the sake of the market than a traditional, revenue driving business. One of the second part of that is tools. So that wasn't in the question, but we did speak about developing tools specifically for Janitor holders. So we actually started work on the first one. Our decision as a team at the moment is that due to the delay in exchange and some of the difficulty of buyouts, nothing should be done in the market until we have listed on exchange, have a stable mechanism, which we now do, have put in place the first round of 3 buyouts, which we're working on now, and have validated our use case. Anything peripheral to that at this point is going to either dilute focus or make it appear that we aren't on a core mission, or take away in some way or form what Janitor is meant to be first and foremost, which is a mechanism for absorbing failed tokens and creating a ability to recycle crypto assets. And that relates to another issue. I saw a post about someone on Twitter or something, the idea that Janitor members work on other projects. This is ridiculous. There was a core team of 6 team members, some of which are full-time in various positions and devoted either a block of months or part-time, part of their day is devoted to Janitor. But most of us are full-time. Myself, I am 100% dedicated to CoinJanitor. It's literally what I do and have done for the last year and a half, and what I plan on doing for the next years. Stephen is the same. We have a dedicated team in terms of development and customer support. We have other functions that we work on, and some of the Janitor members who are part of the initial team, they do have other roles, and that is what they work on. But we were never all working on something else, and the the promise that I made during the ICO before, that I will devote the next years of my life to doing this, is exactly what is happening. And we devote material resources to this and have already and will continue to do so. And frankly, the insinuation of anything other than that is a little bit insulting. I've spent more than the last year, like full time, getting this off the ground, and everything that's been done and built in terms of economics, many of us have worked on. And I have the most vested interest in this. And I think that it's apparent from everything we do, and that part which isn't, not much I can say to that. So if you have something to say about the project, or you have an idea or direction you think there's a better approach to do something, please, I'd love to hear it. But if the aim is to kind of troll or make comments or draw connections to other projects, I was an advisor on many other projects, and I still am on a couple of RCOs. That is an advisory capacity, effectively, some kind of board role. Do not make the mistake in any way or form of thinking that my focus or the team's focus is anything other than CoinJanitor. And if you can find another team that is willing to devote material amount of their life and time to building a mechanism which in the future it will be self-evident is necessary and good for all of crypto, then I would love to meet them and work with them. But as far as I know, up until this point, I'm the only person who actually put his money where his mouth is and actually did something about this. So support is great, criticism I accept, but trolling just isn't going to help you or me. So in terms of the tools, which I started on before I tangentially started venting, is something that once we've done the first 3 buyouts, we will announce the first tool. And already we have some owners from other projects that, didn't agree to buy us, but they're very interested to work with us in terms of developing tools. And as we do more partnerships and integrate with more types of technology, especially around the data side, we'll be able to do more and more in terms of tool development. And yeah, that's basically that. Next questions. Okay, so I see no more questions for now in chat. In terms of next steps and AMA specifically, this is not going to be the last one. We will be more diligent in terms of sending updates, either on the blog or by email, and definitely schedule some more AMAs. It took me some time this morning, but I think I have solved how to do this easily. Anyone who was in the last AMA remembers the debacles of getting the sound working, and I'm glad that that's resolved. Okay, nice. Luke, thanks for the question. So is the aim to generate RP, right? And that can be monetized in the future. So no, not specifically. Monetizing RP may or may not be one of the ways which an asset can be recycled, but CoinJanitor's aim is primarily to find the most efficient ways to recycle those assets. So in some cases, there will be something unique in terms of RPs, let's say tech or some great front end that was built, or great plugin or some kind of shell extension to something else. But in most cases, the fact that these projects stalled means they're actually devoid of any usable RP. All right. So the idea is that we see 3 primary classes of assets that can be recycled. The one really is tech, the second is community. So if they have something and people in our community or people in the coin community want to do something about resurrecting that, then we would look at that. But based on our analysis, that is going to occur in less than 1% of cases. If there is tech that can be taken out and used, great. But the question is, where would it be put to be monetized? And Janitor doesn't currently have a route to monetization. So we estimate that somewhere between 6 to 7% of cases there will be reusable tech, like directly applicable in another project. But in all cases, we will store everything in a library that is indexable and publicly accessible. And the second part of that question, and again, I'm answering this very, very high level, and there's a lot more information in the white paper and some previous videos we did. And I'm happy to address this in more detail in the post on that video. But the monetization aspect I want to answer as well, because that's very, very important. So right now, Janitor doesn't monetize. We do not earn any money as a project, and it has us kind of straddling this line between company versus NGO, because we're doing something that we believe is for the public good. We also hope that it will become something that is really for the individual good as well, people that are part of the community. But a lot of that benefit over the next year or two is not going to be financial. And this speaks a lot to a topic that we address very often, and we seem to need to address more and more often, is the difference between price and value and utility. So I believe there's a lot of value in Janitor. I just think that it doesn't manifest as financial value right now for us as project owners or for many of the holders in the community. That will change in the future, I believe, but it's not Janitor's primary purpose to that. The primary purpose is to establish a mechanism that can work for recycling. And that's really what the raise was for, to give us the runway we need to be able to focus on the healthiest, most efficient, and most transparent methods to recycling, where there is absolutely no link to monetization. That is the only way a market can accept and can be brutal in creating an efficiency for these recycling mechanisms. Once monetization comes into play, motives are questioned, transparency goes out the window, you have a huge trust issue in a trustless environment, which is a disaster, and efficiency is subject to economic incentives. So once we have a mechanism that makes sense from a recycling perspective, we actually, as a result of all the work we do, we've created a lot of catalytic consequence in terms of data collection, in terms of outreach, in terms of partnerships and relationships, and people in the community want to develop things. So one of the ways we do plan to monetize through tools that we develop either through an amalgamation of bought out technologies or through community members will be available free for Janitor holders. That is something that we said, if you're a Janitor holder, you will have access to these tools, not as a barrier to entry in terms of utility token, not you have to necessarily pay for the service using it. The idea is you're part of the community, you believe in Janitor, you're holding it, you deserve to benefit from all the work that the community has done. That is what made Bitcoin great, is what's made crypto great. It's the base of the original cypherpunk movement, and something that's very important for me to be carried through as methodology. It's not that everyone's equal and some more equal, it's that everyone's equal, at least from point of view of support. But outside of the community, a lot of these tools will be sold on a subscription basis or once off. A lot of the data can be used, and to be clear, that will never be private data or any sort of user information. But in order to do what we do, we do have to do a lot of, there's a word, where you collect data and, I forget the word, but we're doing a lot of data mining, and we're collecting a lot of data that no one has ever collected, normalizing. So as a result of normalizing, we also end up with a lot of information that other people don't know. For example, certain relationships become clear to us through the data, and there are a lot of companies that will pay for that data. We do have some other plans for monetization, but I think it's a preliminary talk about them. So to kind of summarize, Janitor itself as a mechanism for cleaning has no route to monetization and never will. A consequence of Janitor doing a good job is that collateral is created that is directly monetizable, and we will monetize that outside of the community, so that Janitor holders, as the project grows and has more and more reach, more and more access, more and more cool tech, will always be able to get that for free just because they believe, and everyone else can pay for our ongoing efforts and ability to grow. I want to kind of end this so it doesn't end up too long also for people watching after the fact. Maybe we'll take one more question. Okay. So someone just pointed out that maybe I might have misunderstood your question, and that the question may have been referring to RP generated by Janitor itself. Whether that is in terms of brands, good question. In terms of brands or proprietary methodologies and technologies that we built. So yeah, anything that's built by us, the brand equity, all of that is owned by CoinJanitor, and that kind of then speaks to the monetization methods that I was speaking to earlier. But the primary aim is to build an efficient method for recycling. So a follow-up question is, how do we pay monthly bills? Great question. And I don't want to go too much into detail here because I don't want to be declaring people's salaries, things like that. What I will say is the following, that, excuse me, up until the RCO, everything that was done came out of pocket. So we paid for it ourselves. And I think that people sometimes don't realize the amount of money and time that was invested the year before the RCO to get us here. Since the RCO, costs have been borne out of the raise, which means marketing costs, infrastructure, development, and then obviously core staff. But I want to be very, very clear about a few things here. One is all of the team members that contribute part-time, things like that, that aren't full-time, do not take salaries. Advisors and people who help us from a technical and advisory capacity are not paid in any way or form. The core team members, and I'll speak to myself for a second, as a core team member, I mean, I'm the founder, I take a below market salary, and I have foregone that salary for much of the year. I really don't want to speak to other people, but there are other team members that have not taken a salary, who work full-time. We're basically looking at it as 2018 for the most part was our own personal investment in the project, with the aim being that 2019 we will get paid to be able to eat. Nothing to get rich, and not anywhere close to the salaries that we could earn or did earn as employees. But that's the basic idea. Sorry, I see one follow-up question on Telegram. Oh, okay, no, that's not relevant. And then in terms of service providers, we have done very, very efficient deals with service providers where they have incentives in terms of Janitor tokens, or we've done partnerships. I've done a lot of trades and other business I had to be able to provide stuff for Janitor. So the short answer is all Janitor expenses come out of the raise, but we're doing it in a way that we're paying cents on the dollar for those real costs, so that we can have the maximum possible runway. And we are being very, very, very careful with any outlays, because we recognize that we will have points where we're going to have to burn a lot of money to get through them. But the idea is to hold on to the crypto as hard and as long as possible, and not use it unless it's absolutely critical. Operate like super, super lean. Okay, nice. I see we're coming up on an hour already, and I think someone told me that if you speak for more than an hour on something like this, that it is a little bit boring. So anyone want to throw in a last question that I haven't addressed? In terms of updates, I'm just checking questions and comments coming through. If you guys are watching this, if you could rather type it into the chat box, please. In terms of upcoming developments and what you can expect, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our email list, join the discussion on Telegram. We will be more regular with updates coming out. Realistically, I don't expect a lot of exchange news over the next few weeks. That's not our focus. There are some exchanges that have shown interest in listing us and will probably be added to a few as we go, but it's not something we're actively pursuing at this point. Buyouts, I will not be able to say anything more than we are working on it until we close that first round. the aim is to close that in the coming weeks. Realistically, I think it should happen in November, pushing as fast as possible to do that. New website will go live within the next 2 weeks, and I'll give you an update when it does. And then once that first round of buyouts is closed, we will start announcing partnerships and rolling out some of the deals that we've done. And other than that, I know that there's a lot going on in the market, and it's incredibly rational. And Janitor is at least a little bit mad science, and it's definitely ahead of its time. And I appreciate everyone who has given 5 minutes or hours or days or months worth of their time to follow us and to understand it and to make it better by their comments and criticisms and suggestions. And for those who believe and are holding on and are really just trying to see this become what it can and really clean up crypto and benefit the entire market, not just individual holders. And for those who look to the externalities that we'll create and really believe in Bitcoin and believe in crypto and believe that Janitor can become one of those mechanisms which helps that. Thank you. Really, thank you deeply. I'm deeply humbled and deeply grateful that an idea that I had can actually be translated to action and do good for Bitcoin, which is doing good for the world, and excite so many people along the way and inspire so many brilliant individuals to help and improve, the ideas that I have and the small little bits of knowledge that I've managed to assimilate. So thank you, and we're here, and it's good to be back live. And you can contact me directly or the group on Telegram or WhatsApp or Twitter or LinkedIn. All of my public information is public information. All of my information is publicly available. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thanks very much for joining us and for being part of CoinJanitor, and I look forward to seeing you soon.